The battle against the Calamity Bloods is reaching a fever pitch. ERZA versus Mother Glare has reached a new point, and we get more interference and characters entering the fray to assist in the battle against the Calamity Bloods, in more so a supportive role. Mashima might also be going in forgetting where some characters are supposed to be, or he just decided to move some characters around for specific roles. I don't know. But this chapter is very much ERZA-centric, and it is very much a very, very tough fight, which I'm happy for, which ends with ERZA basically unlocking a new state of being, a new form, which is very, very cool, and I do have my own criticisms of it, which I'll get into when we jump into that part of the chapter. But before all that, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. Our big goal before the end of the year is hitting 50k subs, so let's see if we can get there before December with the next 4 months of content. I got some stuff planned and I'm very excited to kind of go all in with these next couple of months with some more videos. But with all that out of the way, let's jump right into the chapter. Chapter 218 of 100 Years Quest, titled Mother's Power. And the cover image is literally like a fighting game, like character selection screen of Fairy Tail members. And honestly, it's pretty much a lot of the characters we all know and love, with the addition of Jalal as basically confirming that he is basically going to be joining or be a member of Fairy Tail the next time we see him. It is very nice. And ERZA on the cover here, fighting against Natsu. Really fun, and it could also be a callback to when Natsu tried to fight ERZA at the end of the Eisenwald arc. At least I might be reaching, but that's also just really cool. But the chapter begins with BELSERION staring up at the giant-ass sun that Ignia has basically conjured, as he's facing a swarm of Mother Glare spawn. He pushes them back with a magic circle barrier, and he sees that there is such a horde of dragons, and is wondering if this is going to be it for the continent. But he then begins to hear a barrage of footsteps, as in a double-page spread, the entirety of the Fairy Tail Guild appears and begin to take on the swarm of dragons. We got the Thunder Legion, we got Elfman here for some reason, Warren and Max are doing stuff, Romeo's here, we got our girl Kana and Lizana, we have Biska and Alzak probably. I see Alzak, I don't see Biska for some reason. Heck, Nob is here, which, that's something. He's not staring at a job request board. Very good, very good. Now this shocks BELSERION, and he wonders who they are as he sees the Fairy Tail Guild mark, specifically on Freed's hand, and they all receive the Dragon Slayer enchantment once they came onto the continent. So, honestly, really nice. Fairy Tail, the entire guild, is brought in now to kind of help with this massive crisis. Last we saw was like right after Mest had teleported Team B minus Kana to Giltina because stuff was going on there and they saw that people were turning into dragons. So it's very likely that they were planning to just jump onto the continent and give Team Natsu and Team B an actual hand with things, since everything's basically going to hell. But yeah, we get a big panel also showcasing just the aftermath of some of the powerhouses of the guild, like the Thunder Legion and Kana and Elfman, just easily taking down the dragon spawn of Mother Glare. And first things first, and we're all going to have to mention this, why is Elfman here? Last we saw him, he was with Mira after getting the Dragon Slayer enchantment. So it's one of two things. One, same thing that's going on with Mashima with the Fairy Tail Refantasia thing, and he's forgetting specific spots for some characters, which in terms of character placement, Mashima has been very consistent in terms of placements of some of these characters in 100 Years Quest. And Refantasia, there's been like callbacks of characters that shouldn't shouldn't have been interacted with. Characters like Mest shouldn't be around at the events of Refantasia, and he just kind of, I'm going to talk more about that in the Refantasia review, but all that's to say, either he forgot Elfman was supposed to be with Mira, Angel, and Richard over there, or he just decided, okay, Fairy Tail's coming in, let's have Elfman come and join them, with him basically saying, oh, Mira's got this handled, or something like that. I don't know, but it's just a very weird placement for Elfman as a character to be here in this big spread. But I guess he wanted to have the big guy in this big triumphant moment where Fairy Tail comes to help. But the guild ends up seeing how things are in pretty bad shape. And Freed and Bixo notice that these are the dragons from the Dragon King's festival, primarily the smaller ones because they're fighting them. But Bixo says how they're more ferocious. And we see on the side, collapsed on the ground, is Mest, as he literally carried everybody to the continent individually, completely wasting all of his magic power. Which, look, a lot of us don't like Mest. it is a joy to hate Mess with how the anime just screwed him up into to be kind of weird when it comes to Wendy, and Mach just playing into that just to troll us. I am all in for Mess suffering now. And it's a real shame, because Mess has a pretty cool character arc, if I'm being honest. But one aspect really tears down the character. But now, Mess is down for the count for the time being, as Makarov gives the order for everybody to continue fighting and take out the dragons, which Nob ends up telling Makarov to not push himself, which pisses Makarov off, as despite him being in a wheelchair, he still turns into a giant, at least his upper side of his body, and begins breaking down the dragons, which honestly, I am still disappointed that Mashima decided not to leave Makarov dead at the end of the OG series. It is kind of funny that despite Makarov not being able to walk, he still has the drive and power to just bulk himself up to a giant size, at least his upper body, to still do stuff, which honestly, really nice. It shows that Makarov can still come into the fight in general, I guess. But yeah, the entirety of the Fairy Tail Guild, even the background characters after the guild got bigger, are joining in to fight. And Belisaria is smiling how the 100 Years Quest has just gotten so far out of control that he goes over to Makarov, calling him a respected elder, with Makarov getting pissed, saying he's not as young as he looks, he's no spring chicken. But he wants to give the Master of Fairy Tail a actual request, a formal request, to extend the entirety of the 100 Years Quest to the entire Fairy Tail Guild, asking them to take part and help complete it. Which Makarov says, I don't know about that, which leaves Belisaria dumbfounded. And Kana just says it best, saying that they're not really here to complete the 100 Years Quest, they're just here to give their friends a hand. That's really it, they're not here for the job. And honestly, right now, taking on the small dragons and even the Calamity Bloods don't really fall under the jurisdiction of the 100 Years Quest anyway, so like the contract in and of itself is not broken anyway, considering that they have to take on the dragon gods, and the only dragon god left to really be either, swayed to the good side or quote-unquote defeated and sealed is Ignia at this point, I believe. So yeah, it still falls under Team A to do what needs to be done for the 100 Years Quest. The rest of Fairy Tail is just here as just moral support and taking out the mobs of like dragons that Mother Glare is creating that they can all pretty easily take down, especially with the Dragon Slayer enchantment. So yeah, they're not here to steal anybody's thunder, they're just here as support for the wider mobs that are coming in. So that's honestly great. And I do kind of want some of these characters, though, to join and help in with like Gray and Juvia's fight, maybe with Mira's fight, just so things can feel a bit more like a team thing, because that's something I really want with these Calamity Blood fights, to be actual team fights. And we are slowly getting that. We also haven't cut back to Locus's fight at all since his soul got stolen, so I'm very curious how that's going to pan out. And Diablos is still nowhere to be found. But it's then that we cut back to ERZA versus Mother Glare, as Mother Glare is reeling from the stab to her head that ERZA left her after getting the Dragon Slayer enchantment. But Mother Glare just says that it's way too hard to move around the best that she can in her full dragon form, so she goes back into her human form and lunges at ERZA. And look, in terms of combat and actual fighting, Mother Glare being in human mode makes way more sense and easier to draw some dynamic action panels for Ueda. Have it be a very big dragon, it has its limitations with how they can move. Unless it's dragon on dragon, it can't feel that big weight. But if it's like, human appearance versus another human, all that stuff, you can have some cool fighting styles and stuff like that, which I feel like is appreciated, but that also means Mother Glare is to an extent nerfing herself to make it easier for her to move around and fight ERZA. So it is what it is. I wish she stayed in her dragon form a bit longer, but we're still going to get a pretty cool fight in this anyway. So Mother Glare lunges at ERZA. ERZA goes back into her clear heart armor and is holding on to her dragon-slaying sword Belserion. So instead of going back into Dragon Slayer armor, she goes into her most iconic armor at this point, and her Belserion sword, which is also enchanted with Dragon Slayer magic. So, okay, that's cool. But Mother Glare clashes and pushes ERZA back, even goes over and grabs ERZA's face and slams her into the ground with all of her force. And then ERZA, after falling to the ground, kicks Mother Glare in the face, leaving a bit of a mark, as this gets her a bit more angry, as she opens up the, lack of a better word, just I'm just going to call them launchers, because calling them holes just feels very weird and I don't know. So she opens those up and launches just a barrage of dragon energy from the back. Instead of creating more dragon children, she just launches the energy like tendrils to just bite every aspect of ERZA from her side to her shoulders and arms and leg. And then ERZA has to cut through the energy, but Mother Glare keeps shining over and tries to attack ERZA more and more. This is another aspect of her power that I'm actually really liking. It is more of an energy-based power, so it is more so just pure dragon magic at this end. But it's another aspect instead of her just launching more mini dragons at ERZA, so it is a bit more creative than that. ERZA tells Mother Glare not to underestimate the Dragon Slayer power that Wendy gave her, as she slices through all these other dragon energies, but that gives Mother Glare the opening she needs, only using this as a distraction, as she went point blank to ERZA and launched a breath attack, pushing her so far back as she hit with a massive blow as she is reeling in a crater from the blast. Mother Glare, the only real wound she now has is really from the sword in her dragon form, the sword that was stabbed her. So she's slowly recovering from that, and she's not slowing down whatsoever. She's not giving ERZA the time to really get back up. She's lunging towards her, as she calls herself the Earth Mother Dragon, Mother Glare, telling her you think a mere human could defeat a dragon, and that she's only dreaming. But, once more, Mother Glare reminds ERZA of the fact of her mother Irene, and she ends up saying that just once she wants her mother to lend her power, the dragon-slaying magic that she created. ERZA gets up and pounds her chest as she begins to glow. As in the final page of the chapter, she says to let your daughter use it just this once as Irene BELSERION. As the chapter ends on a double-page spread with ERZA, just like Wendy, achieving her own BELSERION mode form. And she looks a lot like her mother. And that's how the chapter ends. Honestly, the fight we had this chapter with ERZA was hype. Seeing the entire Fairy Tail Guild show up to kind of help with the mob and lowering the difficulty in terms of having to deal with, mini dragons interfering with other fights potentially. Nice, good utilization of the guild to at least have them do something. And also gives the possibility of them coming to aid the other fights against the Calamity Bloods, perhaps. Mother Glare using a different aspect of her power, seemingly, to actually give her, a more strategic advantage over ERZA and blasting her back with a point-blank breath attack was really cool. And the fact that I think that if ERZA didn't have this Dragon Slayer enchantment, and this might be more headcanon for me, she would have been done in a lot sooner, and ERZA was seemingly almost beat by Mother Glare if it wasn't for her going back into her dragon form. And this fight against Mother Glare, she was taking it a lot more seriously. In comparison to the opening of ERZA's fight against Mother Glare was not giving ERZA any opportunities, and ERZA was having an even more tough time in comparison. So that is honestly really damn cool. Now let's get into the ERZA BELSERION form that ERZA achieved. Now, with Wendy, I fully get, because Irene had residual magic and also imprinted her consciousness into Wendy's subconscious right before she died. So Wendy, with her knowledge of enchantments and magic, was able to achieve her BELSERION mode. Made a lot of sense for Wendy in particular. But now with ERZA, there is some loose logic we can really go for. But it is enough to explain the form. But again, I will say my issue with the form is that it does kind of come out of nowhere, with the fight introducing 3 new, I would say, forms or armors for ERZA, which the first 2 I didn't really find any real problems with. Only that the Dragon Slayer armor feels like way too much of a last-minute thing to bring in that has not been introduced while we're fighting dragons. That's really it. But let me explain the Irene BELSERION mode that ERZA has gone into effectively. Now, we all know that Irene was pregnant with ERZA for over 400 years and kept ERZA in stasis within her stomach while she was dragonizing and keeping her dragonization back. And so, for a long time, Irene was effectively a dragon, was filled with dragon power, Dragon Slayer power, etc. for a long time, and just kept ERZA from achieving a dragonization, I guess, since, she wanted to stay human for as long as she possibly could. It wasn't until, after ERZA was born that Irene tried to imprint her consciousness into ERZA's infant body to try and live again as a human. But she let her go. Now, we could say that perhaps there were some residual aspects of that attempt into ERZA, or the fact that since ERZA was, in Irene's stomach at the time of, during conception, as she was a Dragon Slayer and created Dragon Slayer magic, and she was slowly dragonizing, you could say that residual magic from Irene was dormant within ERZA, and ERZA was only now really truly able to do so because, and we've seen from the end of Fairy Tail, but primarily in 100 Years Quest, that ERZA herself has been practicing and learning enchantment magic from Wendy in particular, which you could say that ERZA being able to basically use enchantment magic to get access to the latent power that perhaps she inherited from her mother at this point shows her own growth as an enchanter, to be able to enchant herself with the Dragon Slayer powers that Irene had and was potentially like maybe dormant or in her for whatever reason. And the Dragon Slayer mark was just the main catalyst to achieve that. Again, it is loose logic, but we do have the pieces necessary to at least make it make a bit of sense. Again, my issue is that there's no real proper build-up, though this fight does have ERZA a couple of times comparing Mother Glare to Irene. So, mothers and stuff like that in their own respective. So I can kind of see the theming, I guess, from here, and leading to ERZA accepting, fully accepting her mother and the power that she created, wanting that power to help take down a dragon that, in a sense, could also be seen as a parallel to Irene if you want to go that far. But even with that, I'm still kind of iffy on it. The mode's cool. It's really damn cool and feels like a nice progression for ERZA. I just feel like we needed that actual real character journey, which really shows that 100 Years Quest, especially this arc, is very messy in a way and is rushed in some places while also being kind of slow in some other aspects. It's kind of weird in my opinion. But aside from that, I'm very happy with this chapter. Also, really cool detail, something that I noticed, ERZA's BELSERION sword has the same patterns on the hilt as Irene's just main staff in the manga, so that's another really cool parallel. So now ERZA has Dragon Slayer magic with her Irene form, her BELSERION mode, the Dragon Slayer mark, and her Dragon Slaying sword BELSERION. So she's got a lot of Dragon Slayer-esque stuff stacked on top of her, so she's definitely going to have a better shot at fighting Mother Glare now. Do I think it's going to end the next time we enter this fight? I hope not. I hope at least 2 more chapters, 1 more chapter show similar to, I hope the next chapter focusing on ERZA and Mother Glare is like this one, where the majority of the chapter was primarily ERZA trying to fight back against Mother Glare, but Mother Glare having the upper hand. I do hope by the next chapter it's a bit more evened out, and if you want to, we'll see it end in the following chapter, if anything. But again, like I said, pacing of this arc has been kind of weird and all over the place for some aspects, and I just want to see if this ends satisfying. But you guys let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. What do you think of the ERZA BELSERION mode that ERZA achieved? Do you think the reasoning I gave is enough to kind of justify the form, at least in getting it? Or do you kind of also agree with me on one aspect where we kind of missed the whole character journey, in a sense, for ERZA to achieve that form? Let me know down in the comments below. And once more, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps and ensures you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And with all that said and done, hope you all have an awesome day.